to another Chainlink Q&A. Today we're here with Panche from Kromatika Finance. He's one of the lead developers and the founders, and we're really excited to have him here to share more about what Kromatika Finance is building. So Panche, how's it going?
Yes, hello everyone. Well, going fine. The weather is getting better. We're going towards summer things, so yeah, everything's great here.
Awesome. Yeah, staying positive.
Yes, glad to be here to the listeners and to the viewers to actually present about the Kromatika and what we're actually doing here.
Perfect. Well, we're really excited. I'm Zaji. I have Harris here as well from Chainlink Labs, and we'll go ahead and dive into something. So learning a little bit more about Kromatika Finance. How is it that you are considered the next generation of DEX crypto trading? We'd love to learn some more about that.
Exactly. Well, to actually start about why Kromatika is the next generation DEX, we need to start a bit, like there are a lot of DEXs out there. And we need to start and answer the question, why Kromatika? Well, first, all the DEXs more or less provide the very basic features, which is kind of swap and potentially limit orders. And Kromatika DEX provides both. I'm going to start with the very important feature, which is the limit order feature, because usually limit order feature is not available on the DEXs. You can really find the limit orders on any centralized exchange, but when it comes to the centralized exchange, it's pretty tricky to implement. And this is actually the first feature or the major feature which Kromatika tries to implement, which is the limit orders. And if for the viewers that do not know about, it has actually started on a Chainlink hackathon event last fall. So this whole project actually was, we applied in September or October on the fall, on the hackathon, Chainlink hackathon event, with this exactly feature, which is implementing limit orders on a decentralized exchange. And we joined it, and we were like one of the Rise events, on the Rise winners announced. And this is how it all came up. Like since then, since I think December when it was announced, we started building it and adding more features around Kromatika.
That's awesome, man. It's also great to see, hackathon projects come to life as well, and it's great to see that the combination of all of the people coming together is now building great products for all of these users to use. I think, in looking into you guys before this conversation, noticed a lot of interesting features in terms of how you guys are differentiating yourselves in terms of being that next generation DEX. Noticed specifically enabling no swap fees, particularly. I know, as a user of DEXs, and maybe some people who are viewing this now, there are some fees, small fees in terms of the how these swaps go. But from your perspective, how does that work from your perspective? How do you guys enable no swap fees?
Well, that's the point is that we are enabling no swap fees by replacing a swap with being a liquidity provider. So I'm going to go back to kind of a very basic concept, especially about the limit orders and about the swaps. So we have two features in Kromatika, swaps and limit orders. I'm going to talk about the limit orders features because this is what does not have any swap fees, does not have any slippage, and it's not sustainable to front-running bot attacks. Usually, how limit orders are implemented on decentralized exchanges? There are two ways how limit orders are implemented. You just specify when you want to buy or sell a certain token at a given price, and then there are kind of bots or whatever monitoring that price, and whenever that price is reached, someone does a swap. So it's actually a market swap at the time of when a price is reached. So it's actually a swap underneath, and then you're paying swap fees, and there is all those slippage stuff and so on. What Kromatika does is something different. Instead of placing a limit order and executing as a swap, we are placing a limit order in an order book like way. So that means whenever, and by being that, we are placing that limit order as a liquidity provider. So underneath, when user place limit order on Kromatika, they're actually a liquidity provider around the target price. So I'm going to say a very simple example. I want to sell one Ether for any stable coin, let's say, at the price of $3,000. But so what usually on other exchanges or other DEXs, when you place a limit order, you just place a limit order at that price, and then there are some monitors, some bots that actually monitors when the Ethereum reaches 3,000. And when the price is reached, the bots execute the swap on your behalf, and they're just sending you the money. But that means there will be a slippage, there will be a swap fees paid, and so on. Kromatika does very differently. It's still you want to sell one Ethereum for 3,000, but instead of us executing a swap, we are actually adding a liquidity at the $3,000 mark. So whenever the price increases, you're actually a liquidity provider at the $3,000 mark. So when someone is buying your Ethereum, they are paying you the swap fees. So you're actually getting the swap fees from the other, essentially earning what we're calling a liquidity provider fees. So not just with Kromatika, not just you're not paying any swap fees, you're getting fees, or you're getting swap fees from the others, which are essentially what are called liquidity provider fees.
That's super interesting. So yeah, it sounds like you figured out a way to use the community to help each other, essentially, to work within Kromatika, which is really interesting.
Yes, exactly. Like most of the community are interested in swaps and limit orders. Swaps are pretty basic. However, limit order are not so. It's more of an advanced feature here, and usually when there are a lot of funds to be bought or sold, people are actually placing a limit order so that they don't bother all the time whenever a certain price has been hit and so on. And Kromatika scales well with the amount that you're placing. So the bigger amount, the more fees you're earning from your limit trade. So essentially what we are calling is you place limit order on Kromatika and you're earning a yield underneath.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit on the limit order piece a couple times, and I think from a swapping mechanism perspective, it's a really important piece of infrastructure for DeFi, right? Because in a traditional financial perspective, of course, you could place like stop loss orders, limit orders, things like this, so that things execute to your example when certain prices are met. So I'm just curious from your perspective as a lead developer on this team, what is some underpinning infrastructure that enables it? I've heard some Chainlink Keepers use cases in this case. How has Keepers in this instance enabled some of these functionalities to take place?
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, as I'm going to the point, is when placing a limit order on Kromatika, you're a liquidity provider, essentially. So you're earning liquidity provider fees. And that's what's different with the other DEXs. Because on the other DEXs, you pay a swap fee, you're susceptible to slippage and so on, even when you place limit order. But then the point is that liquidity needs to be removed at a certain point, so that when the price surpasses $3,000 for this case, someone needs to remove that liquidity, basically, and send it to the user. So the smart contract cannot automate themselves, does not have a scheduling mechanism. So we are relying on external scheduling mechanism to trigger this removal of the liquidity when the price is above the mark. And this is where the Chainlink Keepers is helping us or enables this. Because from our perspective, we have built a set of smart contracts, set of features, but we are relying on the decentralized bot network that Chainlink Keepers provides to execute our smart contracts at a given time. What that means is that essentially we remove the liquidity and send the money to the users at a certain point of time.
Mhm. Automatically, right? Like
yes,
when
automatic.
right, yeah, so it's like automating that process, right? Where things that you would probably have to do manually before, it's just streamlines it, makes it more intuitive to the user without having to think about it.
Yes. From a user perspective, everything is automated. So they just place the order. Then we are kind of there waiting for the price to get hit. And then once the prices get hit, the Chainlink Keepers starts to kicking in, and they are actually sending the money to the users and basically removing that liquidity which was sold and sending it to the users. So the users, from user perspective, they just place limit order and they get their money. That's it. They don't bother what is behind it. It's us and Chainlink Keepers that integrates it and enables that, so that from user perspective, it's seamless integration.
Very nice. Yeah, thanks for explaining all that in detail. It's really good to hear how Keepers ties into all of that. So thank you. And I know that with this integration, you were expanding onto new blockchains, and when you look on your website, you're building on a few different blockchains. So do you want to talk about how being cross-chain is important for Kromatika Finance?
Yes. We have started initially on the layer one. So everyone is kind of familiar with that and so on. And we have started there, and this is where the proof of concept was built, and this is where we got deployed and integrated first with the Chainlink Keepers. So I would like to thank the Keeper team, because we were very much closely working for a few weeks, and integration and creating some question answers and calls, and we have successfully integrated the Chainlink Keepers back in January. And since then, there were a constant back and forth and some communication with the team. We have been finding some issues here and there and discussing with the Keeper team. And after some time, we have figured out that the fees, or the gas fees on the mainnet, were too high for our users, and even for the Keepers, because Keepers are automated bot network that needs some gas fee, or in this case some link tokens, so that they can automatically execute our smart contract function and send the money to the users. And from their point on, it was we were very glad to find out that the Keepers were available also on Polygon, which was a very kind of interesting for us, because Polygon gas fees are very, very cheap, and it will require us to a lot less link and a lot less fees in order to run it. And that's how we ended up deploying our dApp, and we have integrated the Chainlink Keepers as well on Polygon, which was kind of a very interesting things. And now we have integration with the Keepers on 2 networks. And to add on top of that, we are also deployed on 2 other chains, which are Arbitrum and Optimism, and we are very, very eager and looking forward whenever Chainlink decides to deploy Keepers there. And for us, the sooner the better, because that will ease off the burden for us having to manage an automated bot network ourselves on those 2 networks.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And so really, really cool to see, obviously moving from the genesis at the hackathon and now moving across to what you're saying now, 4 different chains. Curious how you're managing a community across all of these different networks. Was the idea to go cross chain generated by the community, or how do you guys determine what you're kind of doing next? How do you manage the relationship with the community?
As I mentioned, we have started the Chainlink hackathon, and all this proof of concept was started on the mainnet. But from very start, we wanted to cover as many layer 2 chains as possible, because at that time of the launch, the mainnet gas fees were pretty huge. So we need to find a different solution. And that's why we went to, even from the start, we said, well, it's not just gonna the mainnet that we're gonna be deployed. We're gonna go to as many layer 2 chains as possible from the beginning. So usually the projects, what they're kind of doing, they're focusing on one chain and developing the product on one chain only. We are trying to think differently and say, well, we're gonna go cross-chain from start, and we're gonna deploy on as many chains as possible. And right now we're on 4 chains, and Kromatika has been there since November. So already in 6 months we are on 4 chains already, and we are now having a kind of good thing and a bad thing. Good thing is we are huge and on 4 chains, but the bad thing now we are kind of need to manage 4 chains and add features there and so on. But it's actually a good problem to have.
Yeah, it could be worse, right? So, and to see the success, I feel like we keep saying this, but of a hackathon project getting this far is really impressive. So, congrats on all of the work that you've been doing and the success thus far. And just to close things out, why don't you share what's on your roadmap? Is there anything coming up for Kromatika Finance that the community should be aware of?
Yes, of course. Like the roadmap. The interesting thing is that when we started this on November, there was just roadmap for 2 months. Like we said, we're gonna deploy it on the mainnet and on one of the layer 2 chains, and that's it. But after this kind of success, you're kind of pushing yourself to start expanding the roadmap and start adding more feature, more chains, and so on. And now in basically in January, we came up with the roadmap for the whole year, or till Q3 of the year. And right now we are in our Q2 roadmap, and we have, as I mentioned, already deployed the dApp on Polygon. But we are not stopping here. So we are now on 4 chains, and as I said, now it will be the interesting thing of keep adding more features to the dApp on all 4 chains at once. And those features are some features that are pretty interesting, which are the gasless feature, for example. Like usually whenever you interact with the Ethereum network, with the blockchain, you need some Ethereum, right? Well, we are kind of a little bit trying to modify that so that instead of paying with the gas with Ethereum, you're paying it with a different token, which is which is a Chrome token, which is the protocol token that the Kromatika uses, which that fuels the protocol. So that means you don't need Ethereum anymore to swap and to limit trade in Kromatika. So this is our next big feature that is coming up.
Nice.
And it will, I can just now say that it will come to Polygon first because it has the cheapest fees.
That makes sense. Yeah. And that's huge news. I'm sure the community is going to be really excited to test that out. So thank you for sharing that, and continue to update us on what you're building. We're really excited to be working with Kromatika Finance on all of this. And I really appreciate you breaking down some of these DeFi terms and integrations for everyone here today. So Panche, Harris, thank you so much for being here. We'll definitely share some links to Kromatika Finance in the comments below. And if you have any questions for the team, share them and we'll make sure to get back to you all. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Panche.
Yep, thanks. Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it.